Hello and welcome to the Capitol Report on NTD Television. I'm Steve Lance. A landmark ruling today by the Supreme Court striking down affirmative action used in college admissions. NTD's Iris Tao has more from the White House.
Today in the 6-3 ruling, the Supreme Court ruled officially to end the practice of affirmative action used in college admission process. And what that means is that colleges nationwide, let them be private or public ones, will now have to stop using race as a factor of consideration when deciding whether or not to admit a student or not. And today outside the Supreme Court, we talked to some of the supporters and opponents of the ruling. Let's take a listen.
I'm ecstatic. Asian Americans had to score 273 points higher in the SAT to have the same chance of admission as a black person to Harvard. That ends.
It's invalidating to my experience and my identity, and I think it's important to protest against this.
So this whole case started when a group called Students for Fair Admissions sued Harvard University, saying that Asian and white students were discriminated against because of their race. They say that even though they got higher test scores and did well in extracurricular activities, it was still harder for them to get in compared with some, let's say, African American students or Latino students. But Harvard University and the University of North Carolina, which was also sued for the same reason, argued that it was necessary for them to consider race in their admission process because it was needed to promote diversity on college campuses. But today we know that the High Court ruled against Harvard and UNC, saying that they violated the Equal Protection Clause of the 14th Amendment, adding that eliminating racial discrimination means eliminating all of it. And today the group that sued and won was applauding that ruling.
Marks the beginning of the restoration of the colorblind legal covenant that binds together our multiracial, multi-ethnic nation.
The rulings help preserve the meritocracy, which is the bedrock of the American dream.
But President Biden, who has long been supportive of affirmative action, and said today that he strongly disagrees with the ruling.
Equal opportunity, it is not everywhere across this country. We cannot let this decision be the last word.
The ruling today actually did mention the fact that there's nothing stopping colleges from considering what a student talks about his race in, let's say, his college admission essay, as long as it's just a part of a more comprehensive look at the person's quality of character. But President Biden is reportedly already looking into taking executive actions to try to counter the impact of the ruling today. Reporting from the White House, Iris Tao, NTD News.
And joining us now to unpack the Supreme Court's landmark ruling on affirmative action in college admissions, we have Jonathan Butcher. Butcher is Senior Research Fellow in Education Policy at the Heritage Foundation's Center for Education Policy. Jonathan Butcher, thank you so much for joining us.
Great to be with you.
Jonathan, if you could give us an idea, just how significant is the Supreme Court's ruling here?
It's very significant, as Justice Thomas said in his concurrence, that this effectively overrules Grutter, and they said in the majority opinion that if you're going to get rid of racial preferences, you have to get rid of all of it. So I think by calling effectively the Harvard and UNC's admissions practices rudderless, I think that this is a huge victory for students really from all backgrounds, all races, and all ethnicities.
So I guess one of the concerns that many colleges will have is how to maintain a certain level of student body diversity without explicitly considering race in its admissions. Do you see a path forward for them in that manner?
Well, I think that they should be looking for a diversity of ideas. I mean, they should be looking certainly for students that come from different backgrounds. And I think that they can do that by looking at where the students went to school, what they wrote in their essays, how they performed on their grades. I mean, we should be looking at meritocracy and student success first. I think that colleges, unfortunately, have been trying to get around bans on racial preferences before. So, and those efforts to use racial preferences, they're not helping students from racial and ethnic minorities. Often what results is a mismatch between students and the colleges to which they're admitted. It's even worse in graduate school because you have students who are coming from schools that are not as competitive as the graduate schools, say law schools and medical schools, to which they're admitted. So they don't succeed, their grades suffer, and then they're not ready for whatever comes after.
Jonathan, if you could unpack what this means a little bit further from a merit standpoint, versus race?
Sure. Well, I mean, the Supreme Court has said that they cannot take race specifically as an indicator when they review college admissions. Now, they can consider student backgrounds, and they should consider what students had to overcome as they achieved both in high school and earlier in their lives as they apply for colleges. But it does mean that they can't check a box saying that they are of any race. And colleges can't consider that as they use that as part of their admissions process. And this matters, right? Because it is part of our Constitution, part of the bedrock of our main ideas, our shared sense of being American, that we are equal under the law and we should be treated equally under the law.
Supreme Court Justice Sonia Sotomayor said in her dissent today, she said, today, this court stands in the way and rolls back decades of precedent and momentous progress. Your reaction to her comments?
I don't think progress has been made. I mean, I think the research is pretty clear that when students are mismatched to their college or to their graduate school, it's not helping them. This is something that the U.S. Commission on Civil Rights held a hearing on back in 2006. It's something that researchers today are still exposing, and that is that when students come from non-competitive high schools and they are given a racial preference and admitted into a rigorous college, they struggle. Their grades struggle, their confidence suffers, and then their future prospects in the job market suffers. So no, I don't think anything's being rolled back here. I think what we are doing is opening up the American dream in a way that it should have been opened all along to students from all walks of life.
So what type of message do you think it ultimately sends when you do award, something based on race versus capability?
Well, the message is that your individual choices, your agency didn't matter as much as your skin color, right? And the people around you may be thinking the same thing. And I think that it has students from minority ethnicities entering college feeling like they're being watched or feeling like they didn't earn their place, even though they may have in many cases. We need to get to that point where students can be admitted to a school and know that they got there of their own work, of their own effort, and then everyone around them will know the same, right? That they earned their place there. That's the way we should be treating each other. It's the way that colleges should be treating their students.
Jonathan, lastly, I think context is key. I just want to remind our viewers that this is not a black versus white thing. This case is actually, the Harvard one in particular was over Asian discrimination.
Well, that's right, and it shows that this issue of racial discrimination can manifest in a number of different ways, right? In the instance here, you had Asian students who were not being admitted to these rigorous institutions just because of their ethnicity. In prior years, we've had, and currently and today, you still have students who are black or brown who are being admitted to rigorous institutions just because of their race or ethnicity. And so, again, we should be judging students based on their merit and their hard work and creating a diversity of ideas.
Jonathan Butcher, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Air quality seems to be worsening in D.C. today due to Canadian wildfires. This has led to renewed calls for President Biden to declare a climate emergency, while some lawmakers are hopeful to block this effort. NTD's Melina Wisecup has the latest.
More than 100 million people in the U.S. are under air quality alerts, as much of the Midwest and Northeast are still being hit by wildfire smoke coming from Canada's 450 wildfires. This morning, cities like Chicago and Washington, D.C. hit a code red. And just this afternoon, IQ Air ranked Washington, D.C. the second worst in the world, just behind Detroit.
There's significant concern, especially for people that suffer from certain health conditions. So I suggest that everyone begins to incorporate that into their daily routine of checking the weather, also checking the air quality, also checking the air quality forecast.
A prominent climate group who we often see on Capitol Hill renewed calls for President Biden to declare a climate emergency, which would give him powers to implement climate rules more directly. Biden has in the past described climate as an emergency, but has not yet officially designated it to be one. Here's how he describes the climate issue in his most recent climate-related speech.
I've toured many sites across the country that clearly show climate change is the existential threat to humanity. The existential threat to humanity.
The White House last year said declaring an emergency was a possibility, but since has stepped back. The administration, when asked about the issue now, points to investments in climate projects and tax cuts for renewable energy. Though some in Congress, including Majority Leader Chuck Schumer, previously suggested that Biden should go ahead. But other lawmakers are hopeful to stop this emergency before it happens. Congressman August Fluker and Senator Capito earlier this week introduced a bill that would prohibit Biden from implementing a climate emergency. Although this bill would be hard to get the 60 votes needed to pass the evenly split Senate, there have been some Democrats in the past that have expressed support for such a move. Reporting from Washington, D.C., Melina Weiskup, NTD News.
Thank you for watching the Capitol Report. If you want to see our full broadcast, check us out at epochtv.com.